A 2014 Maclean's article continues to trouble me. The End of Neighbors reports that more than 30% of Canadians now say they feel disconnected from their neighbors, while half of Americans say they don't know the names of theirs. Also, the modern definition of a good neighbor is someone who keeps to themselves. That's not what Jesus said. He said we're to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and we're to welcome the alien and the stranger. Well, SHAWN SMUCKER is a husband, father of 6, and a novelist. His book is a very personal journey. Once we were strangers, what friendship with a Syrian refugee taught me about loving my neighbor. SHAWN, you're here from the refugee capital of the United States, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I didn't know you take the prize for being the most welcoming state.
Yeah, we have a long history of welcoming refugees in Lancaster.
And you signed on for involvement with an organization called Church World Service.
Yeah. It's
a refugee resettlement agency, but you got a lot more than you bargained for.
That's true. Initially, I started working with them and just writing brief spotlights on refugees and asylum seekers who are in our community. And as I did more and more of these, it was during the time that things started to go really bad in Syria. And so I was seeing this on the news all the time, and I reached out to them and said, are there any Syrians who I could connect with to help share their story?
The worst humanitarian crisis of our time. So much need. Just a couple of facts. As of January 2017, Canada had settled 40,018 Syrian refugees. Evangelical denominations accounted for over 3,500 of them. Our church sponsored a family. Tell us about Mohammed and his family.
Yeah, so Mohammed and his wife and their 4 boys came to the United States after living in Jordan for about 4 years. And the first time that I met him was in a small conference room, and I'll never forget, we thought that there might be a book in the making, and so I was meeting with him to explore that possibility. And I remember when he looked at me and I told him through a translator that it's not for sure, you know, it's very difficult to get books published these days. So nothing might come of this. And he looked at me, he spoke through the translator, and the translator looked at me and said, Muhammad says that it's impossible for nothing to come of this because you are friends now.
Oh my,
Yeah.
Oh my. And that is the surprise of this book. It's really a very tender opening like a flower of your heart to something I don't think you'd ever experienced before. True friendship.
Yeah.
With another man.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing to me how intimate and friendly Middle Eastern men are. And I think it goes so against the stereotypes that were shown of men in that culture. But Muhammad is so gentle and so kind. And he sends me emails and text messages all the time just saying how much he misses me and when am I coming to see him again and things like that.
Because he's moved to Michigan.
Yes.
I'm going to read some of your experience. May I do that, SHAWN?
Yes, please.
First of all, Mohammed, a family of 6, 4 children. They arrived in the U.S. July 13th, 2016 after a harrowing escape. That's a story unto itself, getting out of Syria, where they left his parents in their bombed home. And so here's a little slice of your experience. Some of my family members are terrified of Muslims. They glean from the news the worst of the world and project it on everyone who bears that label. I wish they could be there with me in the quiet, in the half-light. I wish they could eat this food and see this family, their devotion, their kindness, their hospitality. There is something here in this meal, some measure of beauty that I have rarely experienced with others. Every time I leave them, I feel they have given me a small gift of peace, a kind of shalom, absent from so much of our culture these days.
It's obvious to me after I spent more time with Muhammad just how much he feels like a fish out of water in our culture, how hard it is to connect with other people. When we would be driving from place to place, he would constantly look out the window and say, where is everyone? Where do you guys go to spend time together? where are the men drinking coffee together? He's always asking these things. And his wife laughs and says, "Oh, Muhammad, Americans don't want that." And I think in some ways we don't know that we want it, or we don't know that we need it, but it's not there.
Loneliness is an epidemic in the West.
Yeah.
And the remedy is in the Bible. One another. 43 times in the New Testament. One another. Got to get back to it. You have more challenge for us, and we want to share it with you right after this. SHAWN SMUCKER is here from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He has a wonderful new friend, a whole family, really. 2 families have become friends. You have 4 children.
I have 6.
6, I knew that, I knew that.
Yeah.
And what's the age range? 15,
From 15
right
to 2.
2.
Yes.
The focus of this book is your rediscovery of the answer to the question that rich young ruler asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? You say something stirring in these pages. I'm not only the Good Samaritan. That was Jesus' answer, wasn't it? The story, the parable. You say, I'm not only the Good Samaritan, the one who stopped to help. I'm also the man dying along the side of the road, beaten down. I'm the one dying from selfishness and hypervigilance and fear.
I think that this is the sad thing to me about when we don't welcome refugees, when we don't welcome the stranger, is that we lose the opportunity to see where we're hurting. We lose the opportunity to see where we could benefit from more community. So yeah, I went into that relationship thinking that, oh, I'm going to help Muhammad, I'm going to help his family, and that's okay. If that's what gets us involved initially, then that's fine, I think. But as we worked more together and as we became friends, that's when I realized that, this is a two-way street, and Muhammad is changing me at least as much as I'm helping him.
The one who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. It's so evident. I don't know if you saw this. Reader's Digest named Knoxville, Tennessee, the nicest place in America.
Oh, wow.
Because of Yassine's Falafel House, a Syrian refugee.
I did not.
And his family. This restaurateur serves love along with the falafels. Okay. He's building community. And he's the one who says, we need to keep building bridges. That's your heart, SHAWN.
Yeah, there's just so much misunderstanding. There's so much fear between cultures and between religions. And when we take just a little bit of time to connect with someone and to see who they really are, to see that, Muhammad wants the same things that I want. He wants to live in peace. He wants to have a good job where he can make some money. He wants his wife to be happy. He wants his children to have opportunity, to be able to be educated and then to get on with their lives. That's all that he wants, and that's what so many people want in the world.
We need to be open.
Yeah.
God's way is always the best way, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think even if people are afraid, I think it's important that we don't just say, well, don't be afraid, and try and negate that fear, because there are really horrible things happening in the world. But I think as Christians, it's important that we understand that we shouldn't operate out of that fear, that we shouldn't make decisions about who we're going to help based on that fear.
What do you hope as people read Once We Were Strangers, What Friendship with a Syrian Refugee Taught Me About Loving My Neighbor?
Yeah, I hope that, first of all, that as a society, as a culture, we would open up our hearts to foreigners. That is definitely something that I hope people will see a normal friendship and understand the person on both sides of that. But I think also, like you said earlier, we are not in touch with who our neighbors are. And so I think, even broader, outside of the refugee issue, I think is this idea that we're so isolated and that we avoid our neighbors. And hopefully this will motivate someone to reach out to a neighbor.
SHAWN SMUCKER, thank you so much for sharing how God has blessed you in reaching out to a stranger.
Thanks, Maura.